to maintain the nonpartisanship of the organization. So thank you for attending, and I will give it to Karen Wilkerson to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, when I joined the Palm Beach County League, I immediately trotted down to meet Ed Chase. That's when he was the county legislative director. I knew he would bring me up to date on Florida legislation and pinpoint emerging issues. Before becoming delegation director, he served as a legislative aide and later as the executive director of the Northern Chamber. He's also a past president of the premier meeting group, the Forum Club. He's back with us today after his previous presentation, which received rave reviews. He's giving us a legislative update, cluing us in on Biden bucks. And I've also asked him to give us advice on issues which our local league may want to act upon. So here is Ed Chase.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you. I'm going to try to share my screen here. So we'll talk a little bit about what happened in this past session and what we can look forward to in the future. This past legislative session, we knew it was going to be weird, and it did not disappoint. So as you know, the Senate office was closed. Hold on, the Senate office building was closed. The Capitol and the House were pretty much shut down. You couldn't get in the Senate. To visit a House member, you had to be met by a legislative aide and then walked upstairs. And once you met, you got walked right back downstairs again. So it was really difficult to do things in a normal fashion. Usually, those of us who represent local government or represent businesses, we kind of lurk in the hallways. Lots of you have been up there, and we do lots of our advocacy and our lobbying as members walk down the hall, and we just weren't able to do that. So it was a little more difficult to schedule time with them and advocate for the policies and the issues that we wanted to do. Palm Beach County has a fairly robust lobbying corps of contract lobbyists, and that was a huge saving grace for us. Those are people who were already planted in Tallahassee and had very good contacts with legislative leaders and legislative staff, and we depended on them significantly to help us push our items and try to play some defense on some items that we really didn't want to see pass. Few of us spent some time in Tallahassee, but not very much. It was a lot of this. It was a lot of talking on Zoom. I remember speaking with the aide of Senator Lori Berman, Daniel, and I'm talking to him just like I'm talking to you right now. And Senator Berman just kind of popped up right behind him, and we were able to have kind of a 5-minute conversation on issues. So it was kind of a catch as catch can with members. But looking back, I think we were overall fairly successful. I think we had a good, as far as the county goes, we had a good plan to have things covered, have boots on the ground when we needed to be, and make sure that none of our issues kind of fell through the cracks. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. You know this very well, these issues very well, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them. Just a general on the budget itself. Started off as a $101 billion budget. First time the state budget has been over $1 billion. Obviously, the vetoes came out. As you see, the vetoes amount was just under $1.5 billion in vetoes. The biggest chunk of that, as you'll see in a minute, was a single $1 billion item. It was money that came down from Biden bucks, if you want to call it that, for some emergency management issues. And the governor ultimately decided that he didn't want to follow the strict guidelines that the federal government put on that money. So he just kind of wiped that out. The other dollars were water projects and other member projects there. So just a very quick overview of the budget. Health and Human Services, $35 billion. Obviously, it's the largest part of the budget every year. If you look at that second bullet point, so $240 million to extend postpartum Medicaid coverage to mothers and newborns. So that kind of popped up halfway through the session. The Speaker of the House listened to some of the minority members of the House to ask him to move that along. So he supported that, and ultimately the Senate President did as well. So they look at that not as Medicaid expansion, which some people are not allowed to say in the Capitol, but they see that as a Medicaid extension to move that from 2 years to a full year for that postpartum coverage. For criminal justice and corrections, one of the items that we looked at that came about was under the Department of Corrections. The Senate came up with a plan where they wanted to basically consolidate 4 prisons within the system and kind of move those prisoners and move those corrections officers elsewhere. Needless to say, that took a little bit of heat from some of the Senate members, as well as kind of our brother and sister counties who are really who are very rural counties, because that's where most of the corrections facilities are. So ultimately, the idea to close those 4 got wiped off the table, but in the budget, it does give the Department of Corrections the ability to develop a comprehensive plan for consolidation, but they have to follow some pretty strict guidelines. They have to take into consideration the facility type, the local labor pool, the geographic area where that particular facility would be. So that was something that we helped our rural counties kind of guard against there. Transportation and economic development, the DOT work plan, $10 billion, that's robust. So a lot of the ARP dollars came in for the Department of Economic Opportunity. As you'll see, the second bullet point is the Economic Development Partners. So that's a Visit Florida. It got funded fully at $50 million. Space Florida, Enterprise Florida, all those were very well funded. Next is our affordable housing program. So there was that was a kind of a difficult thing to follow during the course of the year. Last year, we were very successful in fully funding the affordable housing programs through the Sadowski Housing Trust, local housing trust funds. And then ultimately the governor signed the budget or agreed to sign the budget. But once COVID hit, he vetoed that money, a lot of that money out of the budget. So, we felt that we made some progress on keeping that affordable housing money within the Sadowski funds and not having it swept out. Well, when the legislature met this year and started the budget process, they initially said, well, we're going to sweep and we're going to take 1/3 of the Sadowski money and put it towards housing, 1/3 towards resiliency, which is the House priority, and 1/3 towards wastewater treatment, which was the Senate priority. So that lasted about a week and a half, and all of our local Sadowski and our local housing supporters went to them in fury and said that's just not the way it should work, and they backed off that plan a little bit. So what they ultimately did, instead of doing 1/3, they took and added another $60 million to housing. So within these Sadowski funds, it kept about $200 million for housing, and then swept away another amount for a smaller amount, much smaller, for wastewater and resiliency. So that is that's just an ongoing issue. Having that trust fund money swept out, we do our best to oppose that every year and have that housing money fully funded. But with each succeeding legislature, it just gets more and more difficult to keep that where it needs to be. Agriculture and environmental protection, just a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Everglades restoration was funded at $360 million out of the trust fund, which is fantastic. The beach funding number is $150 million. That's just astronomical. Usually full beach funding is at $50 million, but they used some of the money from Washington and bumped that up $100 million. So as you'll see our beach list later, almost every beach funding item in Palm Beach County got funded this year. There were $116 million in local water projects. We were able to secure 2, our Lake Worth Lagoon monitoring program and our South Indian River water control, which is under the Loxahatchee River Preservation Initiative. So those both got funded and made it through to escape the gubernatorial veto. So here's where the federal money came and where it went. So it was $6.7 billion that came down. So as you'll see, one of the big items is that $1 billion for preparedness and response fund. So that was the governor's plan to basically have a fund available to the governor and the legislature for any emergency available. That made it through the budget, but between the time the budget was passed and the time that the governor signed it, the federal government, Department of Treasury released kind of the rules and regulations of how that money should be spent. You know, as the county, we received money under the CARES dollars last year. So we were really well versed on what we could spend and what we couldn't spend. I mean, they were a little late with these instructions. So he ultimately just vetoed that $1 billion right out because he knew that he couldn't conform to those rules and regulations. But that money paid for bonus to first responders, teachers and principals, childcare, the new emergency operations center in Tallahassee, and lots of environmental issues. So we talked a little bit about some of those earlier, but Everglades restoration is $60 million. And that last item, the C51 reservoir, that is an item that popped up about 2.5 weeks before the end of session. Some of the leadership came to us and said, look, we have this dollar amount. Can we work with you to purchase land that would support the C51 reservoir in central Palm Beach County? And we're not stupid. We said, absolutely. So, I mean, that came to a $48 million item that we are seeing coming down that, you know, at the start of session, honestly, just didn't even exist. It was just on a wish list. So some Palm Beach County projects that were funded, these are all member projects. Lots of member projects were put in, not as many as in years past, but you'll see some of the regular dollars that you'll see, the Boca Raton Rehabilitation Center, Place of Hope, the Everglades Workforce Training Program, which is an item that Palm Beach County has been working on for years, but this is to train those people who are moving out of the agriculture industry and trying to move them into other supportive jobs in the Glades community. So we're happy to have that funded. And our Restore reentry program is trying to get people who are transitioning out of prison into local productive lives. And with the $150 million in beach projects, so you can see our list of beach items are fully funded, including the $4.7 million Midtown Beach Renourishment Project in the town of Palm Beach. So that's kind of an overview of the budget. When we look at some of the legislative issues that happened, you know, there were a few statewide finance issues that were very noticeable that passed. Obviously, first is the Senate Bill 50, the online sales tax. So that does create the online sales tax. So revenues from that collection will go first to replenish the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund. So once that trust fund reaches a certain level, it's about $4.1 billion. Once it reaches that level, then that online sales tax money goes to offset the reduction of the commercial real estate property tax. And that'll go from 5.5% to 2%. That's something that the legislature has been trying to reduce over the course of the years, just hasn't been able to find the funds to do that. So that's where that funding will go. And the big tax package this year, 7061, so that put together 3 tax week holidays. The back to school tax holidays is coming up next month. The disaster preparedness, that was just before the start of hurricane season, and Freedom Week, which is July 1st to July 7th. So what that will do is you can have tax-free purchases of music events, sporting events, culture events, movies, museums, state park annual passes, fitness facilities for events that are going to happen from July 1st to July 31st. So those will be tax-free. And then they made permanent tax breaks on certain independent living items like bed rails and grab bars and transfer bars and shower seats. So that was part of the tax package. So some items, big items that didn't pass was the reemployment assistance. So that was the Senate's effort to raise the unemployment benefits from $275 a week to $375 a week. The Senate pushed on that hard, but the House did not take up the proposal. So unemployment benefit numbers did not increase. The employee organization, 835. That was kind of a, what's seen as a union busting bill. So that would be in which government employers would have to confirm with individual workers that they wanted dues taken out of their pay before those deductions started. So that started as kind of a hot item and didn't see the light of day after about week 3. Senate Bill 84 was the pension system. So state employees and many municipal employees in the state are in the FRS, Florida Retirement System. So this was a proposal that would have, from the Senate, that would have blocked new employees from enrolling in the traditional pension system, defined benefit pension system, and would have required them to enroll in the investment system, which is just a regular 401k program. So, the Senate was trying to take the long view on this and reduce their pension burdens over a period of time. The county, we saw this as problematic for a number of reasons, but really it was a recruitment issue for us. We couldn't recruit or be competitive in recruiting employees or police or fire rescue people if we couldn't still offer a pension kind of program. So that's something that we see as a perennial issue that's going to pop up. But again, as the county looks at it, we see that as a recruitment problem. And then the Affordable Housing Trust Fund bill. So that was a bill sponsored by Senator Gail Harrell and others that was going to try and make the Sadowski Trust Fund statutorily protected from sweeps. So it was very well intentioned. However, just like any bill that a legislature does, that if this bill did pass and the legislature was prohibited from sweeping money out of this fund, it would basically only last for the end of the next legislative session. So any legislature can undo any statute that a legislature does. So while this was very well-meaning and may have been symbolic, ultimately it wasn't going to solve the long-term problem of sweeping out trust funds, especially the Housing Trust Fund. We probably saw in the paper the other day that the Florida Association of Realtors has started a petition drive to put on the ballot a constitutional amendment to prohibit future sweeps of the Sadowski Trust Fund. So we will watch that as that moves ahead. Some statewide bills, obviously HB 1, the anti-riot bill. There were 2 bills protecting against COVID-19 issues, the protecting consumers against pandemic-related fraud. And then the civil liabilities for damage, those bills passed very quickly out of this legislature. The Senate Joint Resolution 204 was a joint resolution that was passed to basically put on the ballot to abolish the Constitutional Review Commission. So as you know, the CRC meets every 10 years. That is a way for a group to put constitutional amendments directly on the ballot. So they would bypass any signature process, and they'd also bypass any legislative process as well. So the legislature has always looked at that kind of with a side eye. So that bill or that amendment will be a question on the Constitution as a question in 2022. The Senate Bill 90 election bill, obviously you've heard a lot about that. That was a problem from us from the very start. We thought our election supervisor, in particular our Board of County Commissioners, worked really hard with her last year to make the elections as accessible as possible, worked with her on drop boxes and videos, surveillance, and spent a lot of time and a lot of money to make sure that things were done clearly and properly. So, there are a few items in this bill that we're not very happy about. Ultimately, it's taking away some of the capability to the freedom to do some vote by mail and some Dropbox issues. It's not a mandate, an unfunded mandate to have election supervisors have people supervising the boxes, because it's not a mandate for the supervisors who actually have these drop boxes. It's something that they are allowed to do. So they kind of skirt the unfunded mandate issue and the 2/3 vote by that. Early on in the elections bill, there was a line in there that would have made all 7 Palm Beach County Commission seats up for re-election in 2022. Again, we saw that as problematic. That would be very confusing. That would be a very loaded ballot just for Palm Beach County residents. We worked hard with the Senate to kind of explain to them why that would be a burden on us and other candidates who might want to need to raise money for a seat in 2022. So that council was finally taken out of the final bill, but we will live with the rules for Senate Bill 90 for years to come. And then the social media platform, that was obviously a part of the governor's big tech agenda to fine social media companies for deplatforming statewide candidates and not putting rules and regulations on there. One of the big ticket items that was related to that did not pass was the data privacy bill. So this would have, this was done in intention to give consumers a little more control over the personal data that is collected by companies. So this didn't see quite a clear sale as the social media platform bill, and it was opposed vehemently by some of our more vocal business community and some chambers of commerce. So that bill did not pass. So some transportation bills. You might remember 2 years ago, the MCORS bill, which was a bill to make a lot of rural toll roads throughout, particularly the western part of the state. The legislature looked at that, and just as I said before, a current legislature can go back and change what a previous legislature did. Well, that's exactly what happened here. So the Senate kind of led the process here, and they kind of repealed that bill and took the $132 million that would have gone to that MCORS road project bill, took it back, put it in a state transportation trust fund. They did take 20 million out for some rural trucking route improvements, but that's just a good kind of a good primer on what a current legislature can do to a past legislative bill. Two motor vehicle bill, the insurance. So they repealed the insurance no fault law. So that repeals any requirement to purchase PIP insurance for your car insurance. So instead we'll be required to have at least $25,000 of bodily injury or death on our car insurance. And the motor vehicle rental bill. So, there's a couple of different ways to travel. So you can, there's taxis, that's one issue. There's Lyft and Uber, that's kind of a different way. And these are peer-to-peer platforms. So it's apps like Turo. So instead of having someone pick you up, this is basically an app where you rent someone else's car from them and you take off in it. So the legislature wanted to try to treat them kind of equally with rentals and some of the Lyft and Uber situations. So they imposed a $1 car rental that will go to local governments to start, and then they will share with the state government going forward. One bill that we try to pass is the State Road 715 designation for 2 fallen Palm Beach County Sheriff's officers who were killed in the line of duty in Pahokee. We just couldn't get that on the right transportation train. So we have spoken with the 2 sponsors of that bill, and we'll try again for that next year. So some priorities that we worked on. One of the ones we had to work on was the Senate Bill 2006, the Emergency Management Bill. So this was done in response to have a emergency situation that lasts longer than a 3-week hurricane. So I think the legislature and the governor are used to dealing with kind of a 2 or 3 week hurricane emergency declaration, but not one that lasts 440 days. So there were some feelings hurt, particularly on the West Coast, where they thought that some of the emergency operations, the executive policy group people may have seen that they had more power than elected commission did. We didn't feel that way here in Palm Beach County, but other counties, especially over in the Tampa area, did feel that way. So, this bill limits emergency orders to 7 days with an option of 5 renewals. But that's only for, kind of non-weather related emergency orders. So if we have a hurricane that is horrible and we do have to, for some reason, extend emergency orders 3, 4, 5 times, we can do that for weather, but not for kind of a pandemic situation. But it does give the governor the ability to review and invalidate those as well. And the governor, he can also invalidate an executive order that he sees unnecessarily restricts individual rights or liberties. We spent the past 400 days trying to strike the right balance between what we thought good governance was and balance that against people's personal freedoms and business freedoms to operate. So, we worked as closely as we could with the governor and the chief of staff and the Department of Emergency Operations, Emergency Management in Tallahassee. So, as we look back on the actions that we took as a county, I think we feel pretty good about that. We opened kind of as soon as we thought it was legal to do so and proper to do so, and had got the sign off of the Department of Health and Dr. Alonso. So we're hopeful that this doesn't constrain us going forward, but it's something that we'll have to watch in the future. And this did also include the vaccination passport issue that now we're seeing is problematic with our cruise ship industry. One of the public records exceptions that we've been working for a number of years is to protect the records of people who seek shelter during a storm or a pandemic. So in the past, nefarious entities could come to the Department of Emergency Management or Palm Beach County and say, well, under the Public Records Act, we'd like a list of everyone who stayed in the shelter and where they lived. Well, we look at that as hugely problematic. These are people who are in a very difficult time in their lives. This is not something they should be hassled with by people trying to maybe cheat them out of something. So we were able to get this passed. This has been a couple of years coming, so we're very happy about that. A bill that did not pass, that was one of our emergency management priorities, was public records for emergency management. So as we work with our partners in municipalities and in the public sector at the emergency management, at the EOC, they are sending in reports and information all during the emergency. What they'll also do is they'll give us after action reports kind of at the end saying, well, this worked, but maybe this didn't really work so well. Or they'll say, gosh, even within our own municipality or our own company, we saw this, we're not really happy with the way that worked, we kind of felt bad, we'd like to change it. Well, we see entities less and less willing to be really thoughtful and truthful about maybe especially things that didn't work, just because that information is available to the public. So we felt it was important for our emergency managers to get a clear and very honest, even if it is difficult, but a very honest after action report on things that needed to be changed, things that should be changed, maybe some strategic things that didn't go right or need to be changed that just don't need to be available to the public for security or other reasons. So we'll work on that again and see if we can get that going. We spent at Palm Beach County, this might have been one of the toughest years that I can remember. That's kind of the assault on home rule, on giving counties and municipalities the ability to rule as they see fit locally. We're going to go over a few of these, and I have a book full of them. These are just a few of them. But some of the preemptions that we are now not allowed to take care of locally, that the state has now preempted and they have taken control of. Home-based businesses are one. So basically it provides that any home-based businesses cannot be prohibited, restricted, or licensed or regulated in a manner any other than any other business in a local government's jurisdiction. So, basically that means anyone on any street can have any business in any home, basically at any time. It can't, the only thing they said, if you view it from the street, it has to be consistent with other residential properties, but it's basically sometimes might be moving some main street to your street. preemption of occupational licensing. So the state said counties cannot have occupational licensing where they charge for individual licenses. Counties can still do it for plumbing, pipe fitting, mechanical, alarm systems, and HVAC, but any other kind of local occupational licensing now just goes to the state. Under the law, the county still retains the ability to have a few occupations that are licensed, and those are for just pure safety reasons. One of them is adult entertainment, so we can still license those because the price for licenses goes to pay for background checks, so we can make sure that we can limit the amount of human trafficking in the county, in the area. Another one is for home health aides, so we can do a background check on that, so they are not going into a home without having at least a cursory background check done on. Cottage food operations is a term that I had to learn this year. Never heard of it before, but basically it's an occupation or an operation that that you have in your house. It's not an incorporated business, but it's somebody that produces or packages food in kind of a small batch that's like bread or honey or jams or herbs or pasta or something like that. So this basically gives the state the ability to regulate cottage food industry, making sure that they just apply with municipal traffic, parking, noise, and signage operations. That's not an issue here in this county particularly, but in the north counties of Florida, apparently it was. And then this Senate Bill 1084 is a volunteer ambulance services bill. So if you watched the county commission meeting, you probably heard about this yesterday. This was a bill that will exempt, because the governor signed it 2 days ago. It exempts faith-based volunteer ambulance agencies that have operated for at least 10 consecutive years from getting a certificate of public convenience and necessity. So that means if you happen to see the Board of County Commission meeting yesterday, we had several ambulance operators that want to operate in the county, and they need to go through this operation of need process. Well, this is a faith-based, Jewish-based ambulance service that obviously that already works in Dade County, Broward County. This kind of opens up Palm Beach and Orange County to them, but it allows them to operate without the COPCN requirements. So that has been signed by the governor, but that is something that our local fire rescue is concerned about. They just want to make sure that the level of care is standard over every county. Public works projects. So this was an effort to try to take away the county's ability to have some local preference and some local preference ordinances for small businesses, for minority-owned businesses, even for local businesses. So this basically is coming at that by saying, if you're a county, you can't impose certain penalties where you're discouraging people from even applying for a public works project. So, we want to make sure that we keep our local preference ordinances for those items in play. So we think we can work with this. But again, it's just a kind of a chip away from local government control over what they do. HB 667, building inspection. So this requires local governments, including the county, to provide an electronic method to request building inspections. We've been moving towards that already, but it does mandate local governments to do that. The building code bill tells us that we can't prohibit certain design elements from single or two-family dwellings. So, local government couldn't define building elements and control them, like color, type, roof structure, type of porch, location or styling of windows or doors. So the only time that a local government can now do that is if it's a historic property, if it's in the National Flood Insurance Program, or if it's done to protect coastal wildlife or in a CRA. So that does take away local government's ability to do that. If you're in a local jurisdiction like a homeowners, they can still do that. Senate Bill 60, the County Municipal Code inspections, that prohibits local complaints from being anonymous. So starting as soon as the governor signs this bill, which he has not yet, probably starting July 1st, you just can't make an anonymous complaint against your neighbor for having, a boat in the front yard or something that's against code. That will have to have a name and address tacked to it. And then 750 impact fees. This has been a multi-year process trying to get this done, but local governments in other parts of the state, and again, I hate to pick on Tampa, but it was in the Gulf Tampa area, they increased their impact fees, 100% over a couple of years. So the legislature saw that and wanted to kind of keep local government from doing that in the future. So this bill was put in place where a local government could not increase more than 25% over the current rate, or only a certain amount over 4 years. They are looking at this saying, we want to make sure that houses and housing remains as affordable as possible. As the county looks at it, when we raise an impact fee, we have to explain why we're doing this, and it's because of the cost of construction and the cost of building roadways. So it's just another push on local governments from doing what they need to do. The local notice bill, it just gives a local government the ability to publish legal notices on websites instead of actually in the paper. That was kind of a big fight between the newspaper association and the legislature. So they did come up with a fairly reasonable agreement that in a non-fiscally constrained county like Palm Beach County, a local government could publish on a website if the costs were less than doing it on a newspaper. And if it's in a small fiscally constrained county, there are other ways, other hurdles they have to fight to do that. So that's not even all the preemption issues that we've had to fight over the course of this legislative session. But a couple of big ones that did not pass of note were Senate Bill 522, vacation rentals. They're especially the House is trying to take away the ability of local government to regulate that. So it got to the final point of it would only have regulated the advertising platforms, the Airbnb type things to the state, and let us continue to do what we want. But even that didn't pass the Senate. So we're status quo on vacation rentals. The HB 2008, the tourist development taxes. So when someone stays in a hotel here in the county, check my time, they pay tourist development taxes, and we use those taxes to upgrade areas that tourists use. So that would be primarily beaches and natural areas. They had a proposal to allow part of that tourism development tax money to be used to combat local flooding. We just didn't see that as a proper use of tourism dollars. We fought that, and that did not pass. And the Attorney General Matters of Great Governmental Concern, that would have basically taken away our ability to enjoin in a class action lawsuit like we did during the opioid epidemic. So if that were happening now, we couldn't enjoin in a class action suit. The Attorney General would have had to take that over and kind of do it statewide. So we are happy that that didn't pass as well. A bill to abolish regional planning councils did not pass, and a bill to allow the Southeast Regional Florida Climate Change Compact to do meetings telephonically did not pass, but I think at this point we're kind of safe there. Some huge agriculture issues, the statewide flooding and sea level rise. So this created a huge grant program for local governments to apply for DEP grants. The Senate President's priority was water storage north of Lake Okeechobee. So that will increase the storage north of the lake, which we are absolutely in favor of. So that will allow less water to flow south into the lake. That's for most items, that's good. And then the operation of safety of motor vessels, that gives us the ability to kind of remove some derelict vessels from our waterways. And one item that did not pass was the Everglades Protection Area, which just would have prohibited the construction of any structure for oil drilling in that area. So finally, some local bills. We had 5 this year. 4 of them passed. The Village of Wellington, so that would prohibit the sale and use of fireworks within the equestrian preserve and the village itself. The Port of Palm Beach updated the port director's title, swearing in dates, and set salaries. It raised them, I think, from $9,000 to $12,500. So that is set in statute going forward, and they'd have to come back for a new local bill to change those. The Indian Trail Improvement District, they are looking into incorporating. So this provides them kind of a guide path of how to look into that and allows them to pay for a study to look into incorporation. And the Loxahatchee River ENCON, it just codified all of their special act and conforming changes and just kind of updated their main act. And finally, a bill that did not even get heard once was a local bill for the town of Lake Clark Shores. So that would have been an involuntary annexation of the Edgewater Park Conclave, which is I think a group of maybe 60 homes. That is a enclave, currently that is in unincorporated Palm Beach County that the town wanted to take over there. So that is my very fast update for you all. I'd be happy to take any questions. If I've sucked all the oxygen out of this event, I apologize. I'll give you a chance to take a deep breath, but I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. We have a question
Okay.
from Alcida. That is the Medicaid extension, the postnatal for a determined length of time, or just for this legislative session this next year?
That would be just for this legislative session. So if it were, since it's a budget item, it's just for this legislative session. If they were to, they would have to put it into statute for that to be permanent.
Thank you. At this point, I don't see any more questions. I do see another one. Is there any way we can get a copy of your PowerPoint?
You can. So you got a super secret sneak preview of the presentation that we'll give the Board of County Commissioners probably early next month. So allow me to clean this up a bit and make sure that everything is correct. But yeah, I'd be happy to share this with you.
Great, thank you.
And I will also share. We're in the process of putting together our full 40-page legislative report that kind of will give you an idea of nearly all of the bills that we saw as something to affect Palm Beach County this year, that we just saw a snippet of today. So I'll be happy to forward that to you as well when it's ready.
A little bit more about the voting bill and what was the real world meaning behind it or intent, if you can say that.
I can't, I'm not going to speak to intent. I think we all can kind of figure out what the intent is there. It was frustrating to watch just because, we know that things went pretty well, and not just in Palm Beach County, but statewide as well. So, for us looking at an election result for Palm Beach County as being, one of the first in the state and no issues and no recounts, frankly, I'm just, I thank our stars every time that happens, but statewide we had very good, we had very smooth. And I think there's not a person, Republican, Democrat, or Independent who would argue that. So, the majority party has done what many majority parties over the nation have done in state legislatures, and have tried to kind of tighten up some of these voting issues. So, will it drastically reduce the number of people voting? I certainly hope not. I think, having the ability of those drop boxes, especially, I think that really made a difference in the past election, especially here in Palm Beach County. So, if the supervisor has to have a body out there, she'll have a body out there to make sure that it's guarded during their hours of operation. The ballot harvesting issue, I mean, that may or may not be an issue. But again, it's, if I had, I would still like the ability to pick up ballots for my family and drop them in. They're frustrating issues, but I think they're issues that we can certainly educate voters to kind of easily overcome, hopefully with your help.
We had one more question on the voting. Hold on, let me look here. Do you see overall, or in a brief, how do you think it'll change the voting, if anything, in the future? What does it limit? It limits
so it limits the amount of, the number of vote by mail ballots you can take. It limits who you can bring them from. They have to be a family member. You can't have outside family members very many. It's the ballot box issue, or excuse me, the drop box issue. It needs to be, you can only put it in a drop box during election office hours, and there needs to be a body out there. It changes the time that signatures are valid. You can only ask for a vote by mail ballot for, kind of a certain year period. For your signature, I think you have to updo it every 4 years. So, they're just little hurdles. I'm hoping that with the turnout that we had last year, and all these capabilities to vote in place, I think I'm kind of hoping that we've made it so that people understand, well, voting's not so difficult, and there are options other than showing up on election day. It was a tough year to show up on election day last year. That's why we made all these other options available, and Supervisor Link was just fantastic in leading that parade. But I think now that people know that it's easy to drop it in the mail or drop it in the box, maybe we can continue not having people feel that they just need to be there on the day of, and that there are other opportunities available.
real quick, are there any other questions? I have a comment that said, "Thank you so much for such an easy to understand explanation."
Well, that's all I can do. I see a question. Did the county have prepaid postage on vote by mail? And they did.
Is that going to be something that will happen in the future?
Having done that once, it might be tough for them not to do it again. But again, that was a COVID related issue. So I think we'll have to see if there's a recommendation by the supervisor.
That really made it easy.
It really did.
Actually, the drop boxes for me made it easy. Does anybody else have anything? Penny, if you see something that I'm not seeing. Well.
So I see someone just chimed in. So wasn't that in the law? So if you're referring to the prepaid envelope, I don't know. That I don't know. I can check into that.
Okay. I'm trying to remember if I saw anything about that. And we do register people to vote, and we'll follow the new law, and requires us to do certain things and make certain statements to people that we register, and we will be in full compliance. Okay, I don't see anything else. Can you talk a little bit about did they do anything? Okay, 2 questions. The FRS, for example, they did carve out certain employees that would still be able to remain in the FRS when they when they proposed the bill, correct?
They, I think they did. I think they did some of the public safety. But again, it's, as a county, recruiting people to come to the county is a difficult process sometimes. So, when we're up against a public or a private sector company that can offer this, and we don't have the ability to offer a sort of a divine benching program. It makes it very difficult for us to get the best people that we can target. So that was one of our biggest concerns about that. It would have put us at maybe a disadvantage in recruitment against other private entities.
And the affordable housing issue.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of things in the paper lately about how Palm Beach County does not have a lot of affordable housing and how quickly the housing prices are going up. What are we looking at in Palm Beach County in the future of affordable housing or workforce housing?
So a couple of things. Our biggest, year to year, our biggest issue is money from the catastrophe funds and SHIP funding. So those are dollars that we use to leverage private dollars to build apartments and build housing. So we can take a few $1,000,000 in SHIP funds, work with builders and leverage that into tens of millions of dollars in housing. So that's our first. That's kind of our first goal, is to work with private builders and get units built. Commissioner Bernard last year brought up an idea to do a 1 penny sales tax, additional sales tax, to use for homelessness and housing. It was kind of brought up at the same time Commissioner Kerner brought up the 1 cent water bond issue that you might have read about. I think former Commissioner Marcus had a editorial about it in the paper this morning. So those came up last year, both at unfortunately, a very untimely, at a very bad time. It started COVID, so those were pushed off. But I would expect both of those issues to come up again. I think Commissioner Bernard feels very strongly about the possibility of trying to put that together and sell that to the community and the business community as a ballot item in the future. So I would look to that as something, as a possibility.
Well, because there's been articles about how difficult it is to recruit people that are at the lower incomes to come to Palm Beach County because there's no workforce housing for them.
Yep.
So, okay. I do not see anything else. Let me look. Oh, people sneak things in here. Okay. It was a question about the prepaid.
Yeah, I'm just looking in the markup bill. I don't see anything related to postage other than kind of what others are allowed to send on others' behalf. So I don't see anything. I'll double check on that, Kathy, and get back to you, but
Okay.
I don't see anything on that.
Okay. And it was also pretty much the voting bill was an unfunded mandate, correct? Because it requires many things from the supervisor of elections, like having paid staff man the ballot boxes, things like that.
So Kathy, that's a slippery question. If it was an unfunded mandate, there should have been a different level of vote. I think what the legislature would say on that is, if you're a supervisor of elections, you don't have to use drop boxes. This is something that supervisors want to do, to make available, to do their best job to get as many votes in as possible. So they're not required to do that. So if they're not required, then any dollars that they spend to support that option would not be an unfunded mandate. That would be my guess as to how they'd see that. And I think the supervisor would probably agree with that.
Okay, but they also said that in the past, there had been other entities that had helped support the supervisor of elections monetarily in various activities that they do. And those funds are no longer allowed, correct?
Yep. Yep, they are not.
So we couldn't say, as a private citizen, I'll pay for the
Right,
person to stand there.
right.
Can't do it. Okay. Okay. I thought that's what it said, but I was hoping I was wrong. So let me do one more quick look at the chat. And we so appreciate your time and your expertise and your information. And we had 36 people on the
Great.
call, and it's going live. So our big hit tends to be who all sees us afterwards, because they cannot necessarily, if they're working or busy, they can't necessarily join us. But we've had typically a couple hundred people view our live and recorded information. So I thank you so much. I know we'll see you at least next legislative session, if not before.
Well, it won't be long because the next session starts in January. So it'll be fast.
It will be. It will be. And if there's anything we can do for you, let us know. We are here to help support the citizens of Palm Beach County. And we have a lot of good people and a lot of good missions that we do. So I thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And it was an amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you.